PTSD is really difficult to diagnose, and so I think in a lot of cases we overdiagnose it or underdiagnose it based on bias. Research supports the fact that medication is not a long-term solution in the treatment or recovery from PTSD. Commonly, I see people in our population of veterans and non-veterans who they're started on antidepressants when they're fairly young. By the time they get into their 30s, they have run the course at the maximum rate of that, and so we add another antidepressant. By that time, we're starting to create some anxiety in the person because they're not getting well, and the medication is going to create some problems. So we add an anti-anxiety medication. And then they probably are psychotic if they're not getting over that because they don't understand all the help we're giving them. So we're going to, and we add on more and more and more. It's common to see people with 15 or more medications. The probability with that number of medications that we have not caused symptoms is 0, in my opinion. The data actually shows when you get to 9 medications, the chances of a negative interaction is about 90%. So when we're at 15 or 20, the probability that we have not created the symptoms that we're starting to treat at that point doesn't exist. We have created them. And to add more chemicals to it does not reduce the symptoms. Okay, my belief, my theory is medication exists for one purpose when it comes to PTSD and most emotional disorders. Except for a very small percentage of people, medication exists to give the people the emotional and psychological strength that they need to make behavioral changes. And I tell clients, one of the things that I'm going to tell you, and I say follow this is deep. Okay? If nothing changes, everything's going to be the same. And they get that. I think we're doing a terrible disservice across the board with medication. I believe in medication. I prescribe medication. Okay? But we are creating addicts, often pain medications. It's criminal in my mind what happens, and not just in the VA or military, but in civilian populations as well. People are put on pain medications. We've developed an attitude within the treatment facility or within the culture that you should be symptom-free. Okay, we're not going to make your life comfortable. That isn't the point. You should be symptom-free. That's a lie. No one gets to be symptom-free. I don't know how, I'll break this to you. You may be aware of this. You all have a chronic disorder. And you will all die from it. It's called life. One way or another, you're going to die. And in all probability, there's going to be some discomfort between here and there. Okay? So if we begin to teach people to manage discomfort, to work on the strengths, then I think we're going to be way ahead. And part of that is to learn about how they learned to be who they are. Okay? Some of the differences between the civilian world and the military world. In the military world, respect is an expectation. From the minute you get off the bus at boot camp, from the minute you go into ROTC, from the minute you show up for officers candidate training, your first experience with the military, one of the first things that you're going to be taught is you will respect the chain of command. That is not optional behavior. Okay? If you can't like the man, like the uniform. Okay? There's all kinds of things. We're going to, in the Marine Corps, they build esprit de corps. The reason for that is because you quite likely are not going to like everybody that you're with. It's not an expectation that you like them. It's an expectation that you will work together, that you will cover each other's back, that you will accomplish the mission regardless. And whether you like somebody or not, that's optional. Respect is not optional. You will be removed from the military for lack of respect. In fact, two of the fastest ways that I know to get out of the military, one of them is to show extreme disrespect for the chain of command, or the president, okay, who is the commander-in-chief. You don't have to like him. Doesn't matter who he is your commander-in-chief when you're in the military. You will support him. You will not badmouth him. You will demonstrate respect. You see what I mean? In the civilian world, it's optional. Now that I'm retired from the military, I can have any opinion that I want to have. And I can spread it as far and wide as I choose to spread it. And it can be as ill-based and ill-informed as I choose to make it. Because respect in the military is there that provides this framework. Okay? That's ingrained from the beginning. Free will is not encouraged in the military. Independent thinking, things like that, are not necessarily valued concepts. As you move up through the rankings, you're allowed to think more. You know, but we even heard it early in the Navy, you know, somebody was getting married, and they said, if the Navy wanted you to have a wife sailor, they'd have put it in your sea bag. I mean, of course, it's not that rigid, but it is. You're not encouraged to demonstrate free will. And yet we're supporting a civilian world where free will is the expectation. Okay? You can become anything you want to be, and I absolutely believe that. And I believe that we need to support that. But to support it, you can't have a group that's going to vote every time they're trying to decide what mission is going to be done. Lawful orders are to be followed without question. Okay, there's what's called the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The Uniform Code of Military Justice is the laws that replaced the rocks and shoals in the early 60s. The rocks and shoals basically said, you are military property, and if I decide to kill you, I will, and it's okay. If you go out in town and you steal something in town and you come back, you cannot be charged, because under the rocks and shoals, you are a member of the United States military. UCMJ is not that way. UCMJ changed things and really kind of bridged some of the gaps between the military and the civilian world. However, you are expected in the military to obey any lawful order. Now, what a catch is that? I mean, if you look at after the Vietnam War, if you look at what's going on right now, and my cynicism tells me that I can't really depend on what's been reported. But if you look at Abu Ghraib in the Middle East, you know, the people that were charged with crimes there, Marines that were charged with murder because civilians were killed. See, one of the things that I try to tell the civilian population is, like I said, the military exists to eliminate threats. Okay, and ultimately, if the threat needs to die, we'll kill it. Well, not all those people want to die. So it gets dangerous. And they're going to try to defeat whatever defeat is. You know, we're always at war. I mean, even the Bible talks about you have wars and rumors of wars, and there will be for all time. So it's always gone on. It will always go on. And so lawful orders down the road, and there are certainly orders that have been given incorrectly, wrongly. The military structure has been misused, just like the civilian structure. And then the lawyers get to discuss it. And they get to take it into a much more sanitary environment and tear it apart and redo it and apply a lot of civilian rules to what the military has done to determine whether that was a lawful order or not. I don't disagree with the process, but I do think that it engages a great amount of confusion, which adds to some of the problems that we talked about. When we talk about the culture, when we take years, months or years to indoctrinate personnel, most of the veterans that I've talked to, when they got done, they came back. They were in the theater, they got on a plane, they flew home. Now there may have been a layover now in Kuwait. Commonly in Vietnam, someone would be on patrol one day, 24 hours later, they are back in the States, 24 hours later, they are out on the street. Now, if you go back to the idea that anything that you have learned or anything that's in your mind for more than about 2 to 3 months your body sees as normal and will seek to maintain it. And you take somebody from a theater of combat, and they've been there for months, and then you bring them back to the United States and say, don't think about that now. You know, this is a whole different world over here. You don't have to be on alert. I heard a story yesterday about a guy that came back. He was a first sergeant, from what I overheard, in Iraq. And he came back. His 3-year-old wouldn't listen to him. Okay? Well, his 3-year-old had to listen, because if you don't listen, you die.